Ms. Owens after she posted that liberal policies were harmful to the black family. Facing an outcry, Facebook claimed the suspension was a mistake. Twitter suspended Heritage Foundation media director Greg Scott for so-called hateful conduct after simply tweeting to a transgender athlete the physical differences between men and women. Conservative actor James Woods, with 2 million Twitter followers, left the platform altogether after Twitter suspended him for this tweet that quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson. Author and radio host Eric Metaxas.
We just have to say this is wrong. This is fundamentally un-American, and it must be addressed. It will undermine our voting process. It will undermine self-government. It's already doing that. When you control information, you control everything.
A new study published by the left-wing Columbia Journalism Review confirmed that search giant Google skews heavily liberal in its search results. Only one conservative news source popped up in Google's top 20, Fox News. Dan Gaynor of the Media Research Center says no one should be surprised. Google is liberal.
They set up rules that are liberal. They hire staff who are liberal. The staff give politically to liberal candidates. And then when you appeal, you have to talk to the liberal staff. And, you know, it's just sort of, we're boxed in on all sides.
A Project Veritas undercover investigation found the same anti-conservative attitudes at Twitter.
I'm pretty sure every single employee at Twitter hates Trump.
And when companies like Facebook start deciding who is allowed to have free speech, this First Amendment lawyer says we should all be concerned.
Facebook gets content moderation wrong all the time. They take down speech that most reasonable people think shouldn't be taken down, and they leave up other speech that a lot of people think should be taken down.
President Trump has taken notice, setting up an online tool for reporting censorship on social media. The White House has also refused to sign on to a new global compact to monitor online speech in what some call a worldwide attempt to censor conservatives. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Tell you more about the problem online censorship is Mark Weiner. He's the president of Strategic Media 21, a social media marketing company. And Mark, thanks for being with us. Glad to see you.
Pat, thanks for having me on.
All right, who do you represent? Who are your clients? You've got a bunch of them.
Well, we have a number of clients, many of them who are social conservatives, many of whom are religious, and others are just in the secular arena.
All right, well, what's happened? You dealt with Facebook and Google. What are they doing to your clients?
Well, what's interesting, they don't think they're being unfair or discriminatory. They don't wake up in the morning saying, gee, we're anti-conservative. They wake up thinking things like there are 58 different genders, for example. That's one of their policies. So they just look at people who are religious and say, gee, you just have 2 genders. You must be discriminating against the other 56. So I don't think they're being unfair.
What do you mean by 58 genders? What kind of, I thought there's only 2, male and female. How'd you get 58 of them?
Well, Pat, you're missing 56 of the genders. I hate to say this, so sorry about that.
I hate to be so ill-informed. But what are the other 56?
Well, one of the spokespeople said, gender is not binary, meaning it's a fallacy to think there are just 2 genders.
Yeah.
So what happens is if you have that opinion in America, it's a free country, you can have that. The challenge now is that you have just 2 or 3 companies who control the social media, and if they then start saying you're being discriminatory if you think there are only 2, that's where the problem starts.
Well, give me an example of one of your clients who's been discriminated against, will you?
Well, this isn't specifically our client, but I'll give you an example of Franklin Graham, who took a stand. He was banned from one of the platforms for a day for saying something which he had said 2 years before about a transgender bathroom bill. And in his case, he had the guts to come back after the day, and he reposted the same post along with an explanation of why he thought that was fair. But the challenge is that many people don't have that kind of fortitude to come back and keep fighting.
Well, how do these algorithms work? I mean, Google is run by a bunch of geniuses. The guys who started it, Sergey Brin and others, they're incredibly smart. What are these algorithms that keep people on and take them off?
Yeah, Pat, an algorithm is just a fancy word for a computer program.
That's it.
That's it. So it sounds very sort of, you know, space age, but it's a computer program. What happens is that an average person may get, let's say, 100 or 200 people they're following. Each of them puts out a couple of posts a day, so you would think that you would get 100 or 200 pieces of content a day. What the computer systems do is they pick maybe 20 or 30 of those pieces of content to give to you, and they filter out the other 170. So you never even knew those other 170 were there. So the computer is controlling what you see.
Well, again, give me a specific. You talked about Franklin Graham, but I'm sure you've got some horror stories. Give me one of them. Somebody, your client or somebody else's client.
Well, for example, the one that was just mentioned online, Candace Owens, African-American, made a statement that was then viewed as discriminatory, and they found a clip which showed that she's number 23 on the list of people that are viewed as potential hate speech people. So she was taken off for a week, and she was simply expressing a point of view. If you or I read that statement, we wouldn't think there was anything there that was hateful. She's an African-American, and she was deemed as having committed hate speech until she protested.
And they took her off?
They took her off, and the warning that's implicit is you better start speaking more mildly or not address certain topics, or this ban could become permanent. So about 2 weeks ago, they banned 7 people permanently, and this is a lifetime ban, meaning you don't get to come back on, you don't get to repent or change your ways for saying certain things.
Who are some of them?
Well, some of them are people that you or I might not agree with. Alex Jones was one with the site InfoWars. There were some of the other people who were on there that, again, maybe you or I might not agree with everything they say, but you would think in a country that honors freedom of speech, they would still be allowed to say it, and then people can follow or not follow.
Well, you know, in politics, for example, it'd be terrible if a candidate's speech was being censored so that he couldn't reach the public. I mean, that would be a total denial of our democratic processes.
Pat, it would, but we're getting very close to that. What happens is that people who are banned get the headlines. So you say, oh, this person was banned. But what the social media companies have is a far more subtle tool, which is they simply dial down the number of people who get your message. So you think you're sending your message to 1 million people. If they don't like the message, they'll send it to a much smaller number, and there's nothing you can do or control that.
They have that authority that they can just determine how many people see your message. They can dial it down. Is that the way it works?
Absolutely. And they do this with individuals, too. They're not necessarily being discriminatory, but let's say you have 300 people that follow you, and you're a mom, and you send out a picture of your little baby daughter, and 10 friends come back and say, isn't that daughter cute? You might think the other 290 don't think she's cute, but what actually happened is they never sent your message to 290 people, and you don't know. They don't tell you how many they send it to.
You know, there needs to be legislation. I hate the government to get involved in anything, but it does seem like these organizations have grown too powerful. They really have, and they dominate. Who would have thought that something that began in a college dorm, Facebook, would become as powerful as it is?
Oh, Pat, you're right. You know, 30 or 40 years ago, you might have had hundreds of TV stations and newspapers and radio stations. No one dominated. Now you have basically 2 or 3 companies started in Silicon Valley, where I'm from, and they have absolute control, very little regulation, and you know, that's why you're seeing calls for regulation or breaking them up, because there's a lot of power concentrated in one place, even if they do things perfectly.
Well, do you think there's going to be some move? I mean, you think, of course, Trump is coming out against what's being done. How about Congress? Congress is, well, the Democrats probably like him.
Well, what's actually interesting is you're getting pressure both from the left and from the right. So Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden are coming out saying maybe break up these, you know, call them monopolies. Ted Cruz is calling for hearings. So you actually have a world where left and right may be agreeing on something, which is there's too much power there.
You know, I was working with one of the big firms out there on a project, and in those days, Google was just getting started. Nobody thought much of Google. I mean, here these kids were out of Stanford coming up with these various things. It has grown so powerful in terms of media. I mean, if, for example, our university, if we buy media, we always go to Google or some of these others to get our message out. It's very important.
You have to. There's basically Google, Facebook, maybe Twitter. There are 2 or 3 places that control the media landscape and control what you and I see. And by control, it really is true. Most people might get 200 or 300 pieces of content a day. They only get to see 20 or 30 of them. So there's enormous control there.
What would you do if you it was a perfect world, you could control it? What would you do if you were the Congress or the president? What would you recommend?
Well, you need either competition to arise, or you need to break up the monopolies, or you need to have one set of rules which gives guidelines for fairness. And fairness would say that whether you're Pat Robertson or whether you're a liberal commentator, you both have the same right to say the same thing and have that enshrined in the law. And right now, there are none of those three things.
What do you think, last question, what do you think impact they're going to have on the election? You know, Trump's guy used Facebook in a brilliant way to win the election for him. I mean, you know, he didn't spend a lot of money on paid media, but he had, you know, the manipulation of Facebook. What do you think is going to be done for this next election?
Pat, it's anybody's guess. Yeah. It's anybody's guess. This last time around, Trump did a fabulous job on Facebook, and people blamed it saying it was Russians. He just did a fabulous job. Yeah. This next time around, it may be a lot tougher for them to get their word out. We will have to see. But
you don't see any legislation or any action coming between now and then?
The hard thing, as you know, is you've got a Democratic House and a Republican Senate, and getting those guys to all agree is not going to be easy.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Pat.
Appreciate it very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not, you know, a lot younger than I am, you don't understand what's being done, but these young people particularly, that's the total source of their news. They don't watch television, and they're not even into streaming media and all this. They watch what's on the social media. That's how they get their news, and if it's being filtered and changed, the whole nation can be brought to a point. And we're going to talk later on this program about how many people in America favor socialism. Why? Because of this thing we're talking about. Appreciate our guest. Mark, thank you so much.
Pat, thank you.
God bless you.